Welcome back to this From the Trenches episode where myself and my colleague James Boyle get together to bring you behind the curtain at Plan First Wealth to share with you our thoughts and opinions on what's going on in the world and to provide some useful technical information for Brits in America that will help them thrive here. And finally, to bring you insights and observations from our life and work. All right, now that's out of the way. Hey, James.
Welcome back. Hey, Richard. I don't know if we're not going to have anything to talk about because it's been a quiet couple weeks in the market.
Yeah. Nothing's happened, just nice and
No
steady
one's
as
panicking.
always. Right?
Everything's fine.
Yeah, I'm sure we'll find something.
Steady
Though.
climb up.
But what's going on with you?
Same old here. We're chugging along. End of summer. I can't believe how quick the summer goes. We're gearing up for portfolio review season for our clients, which is always exciting.
Is it? Is it for them or for us?
It couldn't come at a better time. Speaking of the movements.
Yeah. Well, listen. Do you know what I'm doing after this?
What's that?
I'm going practicing driving in a car park like I'm 17 again.
Wow.
Yeah.
You're gonna do donuts and.
Well, no, I'm not quite there yet. I'm 8 weeks post surgery. A boot comes off next week. Although it's on off kind of for a while. But it's my driving foot. I can drive now. I think. Certainly, I'm at the point where I'm further enough away from the operation. I have enough flexibility and strength. But it's about building up that confidence. So I'm going to head to a car park and practice. Like I say, practice like I'm 17 again, and hopefully next week I'll be unleashed back out on the roads.
Is your wife volunteering for this?
Yeah. I'm not going.
Nice,
She's coming with me. She's going to chaperone me.
I'm no doctor, if anyone didn't know that yet, but I would imagine the Achilles is pretty instrumental for that motion, like pressing down with force on the pedal.
Yeah, I never thought about this until now, but my foot's been static for weeks. And when you're driving, obviously you're pivoting quickly, right, from from accelerator to brake, and like I have got no confidence in that movement right now. I can do it, but I can do it slowly. So I just need to get out there and just build. You'll be amazed by how quickly your range of motion comes back as well. How quickly you just because you haven't done something for 8 weeks, your brain forgot you can do it. You do it once, and your brain's like, oh, I can do this. So I just need to go out there and. Just practice it basically. I've lost confidence in putting the pressure down, stamping on the brake. That could push your foot back. I don't want to do that. I just need to get out there and practice. But
it's like riding a bike once you're back on it. Yeah. Do you you won't miss the boot, right? Do you miss driving?
I've got cabin fever. I've barely left the house in 8 weeks. I've not been to the office. I can't go anywhere. There's nothing within walking distance of my house, but not that I can walk very far anyway. I've really got cabin fever, and I've used this time productively, but it's been kind of hard mentally, honestly. Much harder than I thought it would be. Much harder than I thought it would be. I've not had this much time alone myself for a long time.
After, I think we talked about in the last episode, you had a summer of activities planned, which always makes it harder too.
I had a lot. My kids are 5 and 2, and we're dropping diapers, and naps are getting shorter. And we had my 5-year-old started to play golf or go to the driving range, and we joined a Lifetime. They've got this outside pool. So we had all sorts of stuff going on. It was going to be great, and it's not happened like that, but it's still been good in its own way.
Yeah,
kind of.
Light at the end of the tunnel.
Yeah. Right, let's get into this. So we just got to talk about what happened last week, or when people listened to this the week before.
Monday the 5th.
We woke up and markets were tanking.
Very upset. Yes.
The VIX, which is a measure of volatility, which spiked crazily. So I think it hit 70.
It did. I think it did. It's the highest spike. I mean, really, you don't see a spike like that outside of an actual crisis. Thinking 2009, 2001, and it was a tantrum. The market had a tantrum.
Yeah, and there was panic. Is it the end of the? Is it here? Is the final high in? Are we? Is the recession we've been talking about for years now? Is it here? Markets were in free fall. Volatility spiked. There was panic. There was absolutely panic. We sent out an email on Tuesday saying, don't do anything. The best days come after the worst days. As a long-term investor, you don't need to react to this. Act on your plan. And it was already out of date when we sent it. The market was already coming back at that point. By the end of the week,
I was going to say we couldn't have timed it better if we scripted it that way, right? Now, we didn't know this was going to happen that rapidly, but your newsletter, and if you're not on it, folks, jump on it, but it talked about how your best days typically come in clusters around the very worst days. So Monday, the S&P drops 3%. There will be investors out there, many of them, not our clients, thankfully, who acted on what is a natural but ultimately harmful instinct to sell when the market's down. And look at what's happened since, in the 2 weeks since.
Well, I actually heard, I think it was Callie Cox on the Compound this week, the Compound podcast, which is just a great podcast. Those guys are all so good, right? They're all so good. And she had this great stat. I think it was, if someone sells after a 2% down day, just a 2% down, so that's a shock. 2% down, that hurts. I mean, in the grand scheme of things, it's nothing, but in a very short period of time, that's panic inducing. So if someone sells after a 2% down day and then they wait 2 weeks, just 2 weeks to get back into the market, over the long term, they give up something like 30% of their return.
Yeah.
I think it was, I think she said 30%.
It was a third of the gains, total gains. And that's a 2-week, waiting it out, quote unquote, or what people think they're whoever's doing that is thinking in the moment that they're making the right decision. We know, obviously, in retrospect, that they're not, certainly weren't in this case.
Just to bring this back to what's happened right now, that's Monday afternoon, selling, waiting for this to pass, right? The market's down over 2% at that point, 3%, whatever it was. That's selling on Monday afternoon and waiting to get back in like now or Monday, right? Not long. That's 2 weeks. That does not feel like a long time.
No.
And if you do that, you're giving up but based on historical terms, a third of your long-term gains.
A third of your gains.
That's remarkable.
Monday afternoon, the investors that sell, they have every reason to feel like it's the right, that's the key word, like it's the right move, right? When selling feels the best, that's usually when it's most dangerous.
Yeah. All right. So what happened? Why did the proverbial shit hit the fan on Monday?
There's a lot that goes into it. We have the benefit of Monday morning quarterbacking. I should say too, for 3%, it's a scary day, right? For investors. That's the worst market route since the pandemic, the first month of the pandemic. So people who were invested in March of 2020 remembers we lost something like 40% over 3 weeks. This is the worst it was since then.
That was crazy. That.
You hear about carry trades. Everyone's an expert in Bank of Japan carry trades now, right? Richard, I'll let you explain it.
No, well, look. So I actually think before you get to that, I think before you even get, I think the carry trade that we'll talk about, that was kind of like the spark, right?
Yeah.
That really lit the fire. But the context that happened within is economic data is softening. I still think it's pretty positive, but unemployment is rising. I think fewer jobs being created.
Yeah.
And the narrative is just like, interest rates have been high for a long time, and this was always going to happen. Like the interest rates are high in order to cause an economic softening, in order to bring inflation down. So this is all part of the script, but we're just getting to that point where it's actually happening, and that's a dangerous time. I think from what I can tell, and it looks to me like we're navigating it well at the moment, but it's still a dangerous time. There is still the needle needs to be threaded at this time, and it could go wrong. So everyone's kind of like on high alert. Right? Oh, have they left it too late to bring down rates? Are we going to blow up? Is a recession coming? So that's the general. That seems to be the feeling. Then you get Buffett unwinding billions out of his Apple position, and that starts to freak everyone out. Like, he's panic selling, or I don't know what.
And that generates the headlines, right? You see Buffett's face on CNBC when you open it up, and scary headline. I think it was maybe the Friday before that the week job numbers came out. Manufacturing looked bad. Unemployment went up, obviously. You'll hear about the Somme rule was triggered.
I've never heard of it before.
Yeah, brand new.
Every crisis, there's a new rule.
Yes.
All right, I'll never hear of it again.
And even the economist who came up with it, said, look, this is brand new. This was a pandemic sort of. It doesn't mean that anything is about to happen. Don't take this as gospel.
But there's always a rule. They journalists, they always find something in that moment that points to the prevailing narrative. And et voila.
It's an evocative sort of the Psalm rule, too. It just sounds dangerous, so it gets attention.
Buffett unwinding his Apple trade almost confirms, that we're done for. And then, okay, so the Japanese carry trade. We're not traders, so I don't live in this world. And nor are our clients or anyone who's hopefully listening to this podcast. So this is not something we should have to worry about. But as I understand it, the popular trade was or is people were borrowing in yen. Traders were borrowing in yen, which had low interest rates, and then investing that yen. And then the Bank of Japan put interest rates up 0.25% or something. Surprisingly,
from a negative base, right? I think.
Oh, really? So that meant the borrowing costs for yen got more expensive, so everyone had to dump their yen, and you had to sell their positions. So there was just mass selling going on, which is not something long-term investors should worry about at all.
Speaking of headlines, right? It's one of those things that it's a form of leverage trading, right? Something that 95% of people are never even going to touch with a 10-foot pole. Certainly, like you said, our clients, a long-term investor, buy and hold position, never going to have to worry about leverage trading. But that Bank of Japan carry trade commanded and demanded so much attention in the financial media, in the days following that route. And like I said, all of a sudden everyone's an expert on carry trades.
I can't blame them because it was news, but it's just conflating. It's just as long-term investors, you have to kind of separate on, okay, this is interesting but irrelevant for me.
Right.
Monday was ugly.
It was
ugly. We feel it. I think people think that we're like these robots who are just programmed to feel these things differently, but that's not the case. Like, we're investors, we're humans. We ride the emotional roller coaster like everyone else. It's just we live in this day in, day out, and we're talking about it all the time. So these philosophies, these beliefs, the knowledge of what's happened in the history is deeply embedded within us. And then we have each other. We're always talking about this stuff with each other and our clients.
We don't want to come across as glib, right? We say that a lot, because the way we talk about market movements and things like that, we don't want to sound dismissive. We know that there is a very real emotional component to it. As you said, we feel it, our clients feel it, we talk to our clients through it. We also don't want to bury our heads in the sand and pretend that these things don't happen, right? I think you have to be prepared and know that there are going to be days when headlines are screaming and Buffett's, not ordering his Coke and cheeseburger in the morning, whatever he does, and clients are panicking. It's having a plan in place and always having that to fall back on, to know that, okay, market's down 3%. What does my investment policy state? What does my plan say I should be doing? Does it say I should be running for the hills and selling? Not our clients, of course not. It's saying I should stay the course, keep the faith, and ride out the inevitable downturns. Now, that was a downturn that lasted about 2 days, so that's an easy one to ride out. But we went through a bear market 2 years ago that was a lot longer and just as painful, I would argue, in the long term, because equities were down and fixed income were down. But we know that the market has soared since then. We cannot predict what's going to happen in the next 3, 6, 9, 18 months, but we do know that having a plan in place will help you, prevent you making a bad decision and derailing yourself.
Preach, my man, preach. The Ritholtz love here. Quote you, Ben Carson. Over the past 15 years, the US economy has been in recession for just 2 months, which is during COVID. That's less than 1% of the time. How many recession predictions have you seen in that time?
Wow.
That's Ben Carson asking the big questions. There's just no shortage. We're just humans. We respond to the bad news, the bad noise. But if you look at the data, you look at the history, it's one of a unrelenting optimism, really, or positivity, I should say. Yes, there's punctuated with significant dark periods, but they are massively in the minority.
Yep. By Murphy's Law, this episode will come out and we'll dive directly into a recession.
Of course.
Right? But everyone listening, you have to remember that this is a narrative. This recession that has been predicted, October 2022, I remember, speaking of review season, we were heading into portfolio review season with our clients. The market had hit the bottom. We didn't know that, of course, at the time. Every headline on Wall Street, every pundit, every analyst was calling for this severe recession. I'm talking October 2022. So we're looking at the first quarter of 2023. That never happened. Certainly, if they keep predicting the recession, eventually they'll be right. Mm-hmm. Right? It's a perfectly normal, natural part of what is a cyclical economy. Mm-hmm. It's about having a plan in place, staying invested. If you had panicked in October 2022, same way we're talking about you panicked last week, you would have missed out on an incredible bull run.
Even a broken clock is right twice a day. And you know what happens? In every downturn, someone makes their bones. Mm-hmm. You know, there's a new analyst who called it. In that moment, they become like, they're on all the TV shows. They've got the third eye. They can see into the future. They've got the crystal ball that none of us have. And then what happens is, I found, and two spring to mind, is that they've kind of made the name on that, and that's now who they are. Mm-hmm. And then they just spend the rest of their career making these doomsday predictions, and they get found out.
It becomes branding in a way.
Yeah. Someone will predict it, and then they'll be exalted, and then they'll still be predicting them in 10 years' time. In the meantime, everyone else has made a load of money just by staying invested and not doing anything. Inflation.
So we had good news this week.
Yeah, inflation was a 2 number. 2.9 was it? For the first time in 2 years.
Which is technically, everyone, everything hinges on that 2% target as the Fed's stated goal. But technically within the parameters, they give themselves a margin of error of 1% either way. So 1 to 3% really is within target.
What a journey we've been on with inflation. Yeah. Like, it just feels like it's dominated our lives. Like, as financial advisors, it's dominated the news that we consume. It's dominated monetary policy, and oh gosh, I tell you, I'm sure you feel it as well. Like, everything is just savagely expensive.
Oh,
like
absolutely.
The cost of everything is just. I feel it every day in business and personal life. I really feel it,
and households feel it. Right? Inflation is. We talk about so many different economic indicators and surveys and things like that. Inflation is something that people see when they're buying milk and eggs at the grocery store. So people really feel that pain, and I think this whole journey since the inflation really spiked up has proven that is one of, if not the most painful economic realities that people have to face. And it's been a tough journey.
It's really been a tough journey, and the problem is, as you know, prices aren't falling; they're going up slower. So it was painful. It was the change. It was the speed at which it was changing, which has been painful. Now at least we should start to plateau a bit, and maybe we can start to catch up. But it's not going to.
Catch a breath, yeah.
At least it's going to stop running away. At least prices are going to stop running away from us, because they really were running away from us, and I think it's impacted most normal people. But I've got to tell you, to get down from whatever 9% to 2.9 with the limited economic fallout we've had, I do not want to jinx it. So touch wood, but it has been remarkable.
So far, it seems to be working. Now, of course, we have Powell speaking at Jackson Hole coming up. We'll see how he's positioning his words. Next Fed meeting in September, I think a 25 bip cut is pretty much broadly priced in at this point. But yeah, it has not been an easy journey, certainly for households and economists and people in headlines. You'll see cheering, and it's down, which is good news, right? Ultimately, but we understand that it's the journey to get there has not been easy, certainly.
Well, it goes back to what I said at the beginning. We're now, it's crunch time again. Mm-hmm. They left it too late to begin with, then they put them up quickly, and everyone thought that was going to break the economy. That was going to, myself included. Recession was imminent. Somehow that didn't happen, and here we are, and it's now another crunch time. The next, the landing. Think about taking off and landing are the two hardest parts of a flight. Well, we're now trying to land this baby, and I've got to tell you, everything's looking pretty positive. Yes, there's some weakening. Yes, there's some difficult parts. Yes, this is a tough, really tough thing to navigate, but I like the chances right now. I feel as good as I think I possibly could feel going into this.
One of the stats that came through this week, I think it was Wednesday, is consumer spending. So consumer spending makes up the majority of the U.S. economy. Essentially, if you're working, if you have a job, you're spending as a consumer. Yep. Weekly jobless claims fell this week, which is a good sign and helps to allay some of those fears from the unemployment report last week. Retail sales increased 1% in July, which is way higher than the estimate. The estimate, I think, was 0.3%. So it's at the moment, households are spending, people are spending. They haven't felt the pinch yet. Now, obviously, the unemployment rate is going to dictate what that looks like over the coming 3-6 months. But I think this week's good news on the expenditure side helped to allay some of those fears, like you said. Is it happening now? Is it the big one? Which is good, and you have to take it week by week.
A lot of that spending, ironically, is because interest rates were put up.
Right.
I think. So you think we've had however many years of 0% interest rates, and suddenly people are getting 5% on cash. They've got cash or fixed income investments that are throwing out money that they previously were not throwing out.
Yep.
I think some of that spending is at the higher end, the rich, wealthier consumers, is probably ironically linked to higher interest rates, which are meant to quell. And maybe that's why, or one of the many, it'll be a myriad of reasons. Maybe that's why one of the reasons why we managed to avert disaster. They put up interest rates, which quelled economic activity, but at the same time, that created more excess cash for some people, though they could continue spending and it balanced each other out. I don't know. That's probably massively oversimplifying it, but
directionally correct, I would say. And to your point about cash, I think we talked about this in the last episode too, that it's people talk about investing surplus and having cash reserves and things. And it's attractive when you have a money market paying 5.25%, right? If we get into this rate cutting cycle, which seems to be the case here, I'll be interested to see how eagerly investors move that cash reserves, money markets, CDs, bank accounts into the market, and what kind of economic environment they're doing that in.
Too slowly.
Yeah, that's a guarantee.
100% too slowly. They'll miss the boat. They'll miss the boat, and because cash right now, this very second, yes, cash is delivering more than inflation, but long term, it's just not the case.
Yep.
The economy couldn't run on that basis, and money will move, but it will move probably too late, because it's just the nature of the beast.
No one's built wealth in a savings account, right? You cannot have long-term returns above and beyond inflation by investing in cash. There's no risk premium. You just can't do it.
Oh, exactamundo. Anything else on that before we move on?
No, I think we've ranted enough.
Yeah. So I saw an article recently. I think it's worth bringing to people's attention because I think this is a problem and a growing problem, and it's only going to get worse. And it was in the New York Times, and it's how one man lost $740,000 to scammers targeting his retirement savings. Criminals on the internet are increasingly going after Americans over the age of 60 because they are viewed as having the largest piles of savings, and they do. And this is only going to get worse with AI and all these other tools. But essentially, this guy, it was a really sophisticated scam. This is a retired lawyer. This is a successful, intelligent, sophisticated person. He's somehow created like an overlay over his yeah, I think it was Wells Fargo or something, and maybe not whoever had his retirement benefits, they created some sort of overlay screen. When he tried to log in, it failed. He had to call in. Little did he know he was calling the criminals. And then this really, they managed to this was a team approach, and they managed to convince him that he was part of an FBI sting into money laundering, and there was he was passed from different agents, and there were some warning signs of hindsight, but it was sophisticated, and ended up draining his retirement savings. And what's ironic here is he actually had a bank advisor, and they went into the bank, and he was trying to take the money out, and the bank said, "No, we think something's fishy here," and they refused to do it. And then the scammers helped him basically roll it over somewhere else where no questions were asked. Yeah, so there was a professional, and the professional and the bank did their job to a point. I don't know if they could have done more.
What's tragic about these cases, I think they're called, it's a horrible name, pig butchering.
Yeah.
If you can Google that term, and you'll see the basic sort of structure of what it is. And they target people who are vulnerable or alone, or, it tends to be older people. It's a numbers game. These people are doing this professionally, day in and day out, and ultimately they know they're going to, sheer numbers, one or two people on that day or that week are going to be victims of these frauds. And they learn what they need to do to get by every single obstacle and barrier along the way. Like this idea of rolling it over. I hadn't heard that piece of it yet.
With all our clients, we have their details. Then we'll have like a trusted contact, right? And I wonder, because one of the part of the coaching was he was coached to keep it quiet from his kids. Didn't want as part of the secrecy of the sting that was going on. Right?
Isolate them. Yep.
And I wonder if that happened to one of our clients. I'd like to think we would have been so suspicious, because there really were alarm. As a professional, you're like, this, something's not kosher here.
Yeah. Quite
obviously not kosher. And I think, would we have then used that to contact one of the trusted contacts and brought the kids into it? I like to think so.
Yeah.
I'm not. If you read the article, the bank did a good job. They just maybe think there was one final hurdle they could have helped him with.
And what's sad is, in these cases, it's in retrospect that I'm sure this gentleman, right, looks back. Number one, the money's gone. It is my understanding, right? There's usually it's overseas, and there's very little they can do about it.
It's worse, because not only is the money gone, 740, but it's came out of an IRA. So now the IRS wants their tax.
It'll be deemed a taxable distribution.
And apparently there used to be some sort of relief for this, but I think it was the Tax Jobs Act, whatever the one that Trump enacted, I think it was removed. Wow. So there's no relief for it. So it's double whammy.
Horrible. It's only in retrospect that I'm sure this is a gentleman, like you said, well-meaning, just happened to be the victim of this. And in retrospect, those red flags that when you're in the heat of the moment and you're speaking with these people who have the training to do this, in retrospect, you think, how did I fall for it? But the reality is people do, and it's tragic. It's a shame.
James, 10 years ago, more, 2014. My wife got scammed on Airbnb. She got encouraged to go off platform and send money to a UK bank. And I think she ran it past me, and I wasn't really paying attention. I was like, yeah, sounds fine. And relatively wasn't a big sum of money, a couple of thousand. But we didn't get any of it back, obviously. But it was so obvious with hindsight. It was so obvious, but just we were busy, just wanting to get this sorted, wanting the property, and I wouldn't fall for that now, to stay on platform.
And they're sophisticated. I think that's the big takeaway, right? Is there are bad actors, and this is not an amateur sort of, knocking on your door and asking for funds or something. These are sophisticated approaches. They know what works and what doesn't, and it's sad to say that you have to be on guard. Certainly, we have the safeguards we do for our clients. For digital platforms, everyone for their bank and everything should be using two-factor, multi-factor authentication wherever you can. Different passwords, a password manager if you can, but ultimately you do have to be aware.
And I learned recently, so Zelle or Zelle, I'm never sure how to say it. The bank, the way you transfer funds around. Banks don't insure that.
Wow.
If it's a bank error, yeah, for sure. But if you send it to a scammer, or if you accidentally put the wrong amount in, you forget about it. You're not getting that back.
Very common scam on those apps that I've seen or read about. Thankfully haven't seen. You get a random. For people who don't know, there's these sort of electronic payment platforms in the U.S. We don't really have a unifying one between the banks. Zelle, I think, is the closest to that. It's sort of this conglomerate of banks that you can send money to and from people electronically.
Because it is the conglomerate of banks. Big banks. I just assumed,
it's insured.
I just assumed it was insured, and someone scams you, the bank will make it right, and then go after them. That's what I thought.
What I've heard is a common scam. Maybe they've changed this or fixed this, because you can just send money to someone. So what happens is you get a $50 deposit, whatever it is, $1,000 deposit from a random number via Zelle. You get a message in the app that says, "Hey, I'm so sorry. I meant to send this to a friend of mine. Terrible mistake. It's a rent payment. Would you mind sending it back?" Now the money's showing is in your account. Oh, okay, no problem. I'll send it back to you. You send it back. Bad bank account. The money bounces. You are now on the hook for whatever those funds were.
Oh, really?
Yep, that's a very common scam on these payment platforms. It's sort of the version of
wait. I don't. Wait, so the money they sent you isn't real?
Right. It was never real to begin with. It's almost the modern day version of. Did you ever hear the check bouncing scams, where a lot of times what they'll do is have a job listing, and you have this sham interview. This is common nowadays too. You have this sham interview. They say you're hired. We're going to send you a computer, a laptop, Mac. You'll be reimbursed. You just need we'll send you a $1,000 check, cash it, pay for the funds, whatever it is, and then you'll be reimbursed. The check was no good. Most banks nowadays will honor a check. It's sort of a pending before it clears, right? You're spending money you think is in your account. It's not. That check bounces, you don't get reimbursed. It comes out of your funds. Same exact idea on the Zelle platform.
Yikes. Yeah, so everyone, this is only going to get worse.
Be aware, yeah.
Yeah, we're inundated, and they're getting better and better, these phishing emails, phishing letters. I'm seeing fake letters from HMRC. I saw one from HMRC this morning online. They're getting better and better. Yeah, you just need to build in checks and balances, and it's super annoying, having two-factor authentication and having to call up and not being able to do stuff at the click of it. And we're more and more conditioned to be able to do stuff at the click of a button.
Yeah.
But these things are there for all of our protection.
Mm-hmm.
And they're getting more and more necessary.
We need an uplifting ending after scans. Well, we have to do our pick and mix.
Okay, pick and mix. What have you got for us?
I read a book recently. Now, this list comes out. I don't know. It might actually be a UK institution. The Booker Prize. Have you heard of this?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Big time sort of. I think it might all be novel awards list. Happened to see The Guardian had posted this list of, I want to say they're finalists. I don't think they've actually awarded them yet. A book called Orbital. The author Samantha Harvey. Very quick read. If you have any interest, I'm going to sound like such a nerd here, in space travel, space exploration. It's set on one day.
Like sci-fi or
no,
for real.
Real.
Okay.
It's set. The idea of the story, the conceit is, it's one day on the ISS, on the International Space Station.
Oh, okay, yeah.
And it's sort of, each chapter goes through a point of view of one of the astronauts on the ISS. I think it's less than 200 pages. One of my favorite books I've read this year. It's really an interesting portrait of not only what they go through and what their life is like, but also, not to sound too corny and overwrought, but also this idea of humanity and striving and things like that. It was really, really good. I would recommend it.
Well, I've got a book as well, actually. I'm reading a book called A Place of Greater Safety by Hilary Mantel. Have you heard of Hilary Mantel?
She wrote Wolf Hall.
She wrote Wolf Hall. Right. So was that big in America?
I haven't read it, but she's pretty well known. It's like historical fiction, or?
Yes. Yeah. So she wrote, there's like a trilogy of these books. I think the first one is Wolf Hall, which deal with, people know it for Henry VIII, but it's really, the protagonist is Thomas Cromwell, which was like his henchman during that tumultuous period, who met his own sticky end. And actually there's an incredible something that reignited my interest in this time was, I was living in New York, and there's the Frick collection. Are you familiar with the Frick collection?
Oh, yes.
Right, so we actually lived near the Frick collection for a time, and we went in there one day. It's just this incredible house with this incredible art. It's amazing. But you walk into the drawing room or whatever. Anyway, there's a big fireplace. Above the fireplace is a very angry-looking man painting, very famous painting. I can't remember what it was. But on either side of the fireplace are two paintings, and they're looking at each other malevolently in my head. And I'm like, I know these. Wait, that's Thomas Cromwell. And he's staring at his arch nemesis. Both ended up getting, basically, Cromwell got him beheaded, and he ended up getting beheaded. And they're staring at each other. The painter was a guy called Hans Holbein, and he painted it all like the iconic Henry VIII, the famous images. Portraiture. But he painted these two guys as well, and they're in this house and they're looking at each other, Sir Thomas More. It's Thomas
Thomas
Cromwell
More. Okay.
staring at and they were arch enemies, and they both came to a sticky end, as everyone did under Henry VIII. And these are 500-year-old paintings, and they're staring each other across this fireplace, and I wasn't expecting it. And it just really reignited my interest in this period. So I went and read all the Hilary Mantel, the trilogy that she put out. Unfortunately, she died recently, but a place of greater safety. It deals with the French Revolution.
Okay, so this isn't part of the Wolf Hall trilogy.
No, it's one of her earlier books, and
Okay.
French Revolution it's just a period I wanted to know, and I'll read biographies and stuff, but I sometimes find starting with historical fiction is a really great way to get into the period and the characters, and it brings the characters to life in ways that may not be completely accurate, but humanizes them in a way that a biography simply can't, because it's dealing with it doesn't have that kind of that latitude.
Yep.
So I'm familiar with what happened during the French Revolution, particularly the Reign of Terror, but the famous figures of like Danton and Robespierre especially, I've never really been able to get a handle on them in a way I have other figures. So I love her work. So I went back to Greater Safety, and I've not finished it yet. I'm not quite at the Reign of Terror, although we're gearing up for it right now. And it's just remind me how much I love good historical fiction. I don't read too much historical fiction because reading novels keeps me up at night. I can literally read till 3 a.m. So I'll read biographies and other history books because I enjoy them, but I can still fall asleep. But I'm really enjoying it, and I'm really enjoying her work.
She's apparently an incredible writer. Like, her prose alone is really amazing. I have to check her out. She pops up a lot on those historical. What was the one? Pillars of the Earth obviously is a big one. I'm sure you've read.
Pillars of the Earth. Yeah, I've read. What got me into this though was one. Colleen McCulloch.
That's Rome.
Yes, the first one is called A First Man in Rome. Mm-hmm. The First Man in Rome is about Gaius Marius, and it goes all the way through right to Antony and Cleopatra. It's practically nearly 60 odd years, and that really got me into. I had a dog called Caesar based on the back of these books, basically.
I remember you talking about McCulloch. You might like Edward Rutherford if you've never read him. He does he'll pick a geographical area. So he has one on London, and then it follows family lines from 1200 to modern day. Pretty fascinating. Good writer too. Really? Yeah.
Rutherford. I
think it's Rutherford. Rutherford. I think.
I'll check that out. I'll check that out once I'm through with a place of greater safety. It's good. I recommend it. If you got any interest in this period, and I have, it's a good read.
Absolutely.
All right, my man. We're done. Till next time.
Thank you all for listening.
All right. Cheers. See you soon.
Take care.
Bye-bye.